Conflict of values. The ideological and religious divide, the tension between Iran, America, and Israel is not just about land or resources, but is deeply rooted in a conflict of values, ideological and religious divides that shape the policies, worldviews, and actions of these nations. At the heart of the conflict lies a stark contrast between the political and social systems that each nation promotes. While Iran operates under an Islamic theocracy, America and Israel are founded on secular democratic principles, which inevitably leads to clashes on almost every level, from governance to cultural practices. Iran's Islamic governance, Iran's political structure, is a blend of theocratic rule and republican elements. The highest authority is the supreme leader, a religious figure who holds ultimate power, overseeing both political and religious matters. This governance system was established after the 1979 Islamic Revolution, when the Pahlavi monarchy, which was aligned with Western powers, was overthrown. The revolution replaced it with a theocratic government based on the principles of Shia Islam. Iran views itself as the champion of Islamic values, advocating for a society that adheres strictly to religious doctrine. And this includes issues like the role of women, the implementation of Islamic law Sharia, and the rejection of secularism in governance. Iran's foreign policy, too, is deeply influenced by its ideological stance. The regime portrays itself as a protector of the oppressed, especially in the Muslim world, and positions itself in opposition to what it considers the imperialist and secular forces of the West, particularly the U.S. and Israel. Iran's support for groups like Hezbollah and Hamas further exemplifies its ideological opposition to the West and its support for the broader Islamic cause, which it believes transcends national borders. America's secular democracy, in contrast, the United States is founded on the principles of secular democracy, where the separation of church and state is enshrined in its Constitution. America prides itself on its values of individual freedom, human rights, and democracy, principles that are often at odds with Iran's theocratic regime. America's political system is built on representative democracy, where leaders are elected through a free and fair process, and the rule of law prevails, with an emphasis on individual freedoms such as freedom of speech, religion, and assembly. The U.S. often positions itself as a global leader in promoting democracy and human rights, using its influence to encourage nations to adopt democratic practices. This ideological divide has made it difficult for Iran and America to find common ground, particularly because of their fundamentally different views on governance. While Iran believes that Islam should govern all aspects of life, including politics, America holds that the state should remain neutral on matters of religion, and that religious freedom should be guaranteed for all. This difference is not just theoretical, it translates into tangible policy differences, such as America's support for Israel, its economic sanctions against Iran, and its promotion of democracy in the Middle East. Israel's secular state with religious influences, Israel, though a secular democracy on paper, also faces an ideological challenge due to its own religious context. Founded as a Jewish state in 1948, Israel incorporates religious elements into its national identity, particularly when it comes to the city of Jerusalem, which holds deep religious significance for Jews, Muslims, and Christians. However, Israel's government operates under secular democratic principles similar to those of the U.S., though it is influenced by the Orthodox Jewish community in various ways, especially in matters like marriage, education, and national holidays. This blend of secular democracy with religious significance complicates the relationship between Israel and Iran, as Iran views Israel as a colonial force imposed upon the region by the West, while Israel sees itself as a democratic sanctuary for Jews surrounded by hostile nations. A clash of world use the ideological differences between Iran, America, and Israel create a world clash that is not easily reconciled. For Iran, the U.S. and Israel represent the epitome of secularism and what they perceive as the moral decay of Western civilization. On the other hand, America and Israel view Iran's theocratic system as a threat to democracy and human rights, fearing that its model could inspire similar movements elsewhere in the Middle East. Iran's rejection of secularism challenges the foundations of both American and Israeli societies, leading to a standoff that is not merely political but cultural and philosophical. In conclusion, the ideological and religious divide between Iran, America, and Israel lies at the core of their conflict. Iran's Islamic governance directly challenges the secular democracies of America and Israel, as they promote fundamentally different political and social systems. This conflict is not just about territorial disputes or military might. It's about clashing worldviews, values, and ways of life that have made peaceful coexistence difficult. Until there is mutual recognition and respect for each other's fundamental values, this ideological struggle will continue to shape the relationship between these nations. Regional dominance. The geopolitical struggle for control in the Middle East, often considered the world's most strategically significant region, has been a focal point of geopolitical competition for centuries. In recent decades, the struggle for dominance in this region has intensified, with Iran, the United States, and Israel each vying for influence, often with opposing goals. This battle for control is rooted in a mix of historical, religious, political, and economic factors, and it shapes the ongoing tensions between these nations. Iran seeks to expand its power and influence across the region, while the U.S. and Israel work tirelessly to counterbalance this influence to protect their own strategic interests. Iran's ambitions for regional leadership. Iran, as a major power in the Middle East, has long viewed itself as a regional leader. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, when the U.S. backed Shah was overthrown and the Islamic Republic was established, Iran's foreign policy has been defined by a desire to assert itself as a dominant player in the region. The Iranian leadership, led by the supreme leader, believes in the concept of veli-ati faqih, a system where religious authority holds significant sway over political decisions. Under this system, Iran seeks to project power, both ideologically and militarily, in order to shape the future of the region according to its values, particularly Shia Islam. Iran's ambitions for regional dominance are evident in its alliances and support for proxy groups and militias throughout the Middle East. From Hezbollah in Lebanon to various militias in Iraq and Syria, Iran has built a network of allies that extend its reach well beyond its borders. These alliances enable Iran to exert significant influence in countries like Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen, allowing it to challenge the U.S.-backed Arab monarchies, especially Saudi Arabia, and to disrupt American and Israeli influence in the region. Furthermore, Iran's role in the 2015 Iran nuclear deal JCPOA and its subsequent nuclear ambitions are closely tied to its desire for regional power. With a nuclear-capable Iran, the country believes it can solidify its dominance and deter any foreign intervention. Iran's nuclear program, despite being framed as peaceful, has alarmed the West, particularly Israel and the United States, who see it as a direct challenge to their interests in the region. the U.S. and Israel, countering Iran's expansion for the United States, the Middle East is a region of immense strategic importance, primarily because of its vast energy resources and its proximity to both Europe and Asia. America's policy in the Middle East has been to ensure the security of its allies, notably Israel and Saudi Arabia, while maintaining control over oil flows and curbing the influence of rival powers like Iran. The U.S. seeks to prevent Iran from becoming the dominant power in the region because it views Iran's rise as a threat to its interests and its long-standing alliances in the area. The idea of a Shiite crescent, a belt of Iranian influence stretching from Tehran through Iraq and Syria to Lebanon, is deeply unsettling to American policymakers who fear that it would destabilize key regions and shift the balance of power in favor of Iran. Israel shares similar concerns about Iran's rise. As the only nuclear-armed power in the region and a democracy, Israel sees itself as the primary target of Iran's regional ambitions. The Iranian leadership, particularly under the rhetoric of former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, has repeatedly called for the destruction of Israel, positioning the Jewish state as an existential threat. For Israel, the prospect of a nuclear-armed Iran is intolerable, as it would not only empower Iran to potentially attack Israel, but it would also embolden Iran's proxy groups, which threaten Israel's security on multiple fronts, from Lebanon to Gaza. In response to these growing threats, Israel and the United States have formed a close alliance to counter Iran's influence. The U.S. has provided military support to Israel, including advanced weapons systems like the Iron Dome missile defense system, and has worked to isolate Iran diplomatically and economically. Sanctions on Iran, particularly its nuclear program and its support for militant groups, have been a cornerstone of American policy aimed at limiting Iran's regional power. Shifting alliances and proxy conflicts, the geopolitical struggle for regional dominance is further complicated by the complex network of alliances and proxy conflicts that define the Middle East. Iran's support for groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis in Yemen creates direct confrontation with U.S.-backed governments such as those of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and other Gulf states. These countries are concerned that Iran's increasing influence could shift the regional balance of power in favor of Tehran's vision for the Middle East, which could undermine their own political systems and their relationships with the U.S. This has led to a series of proxy wars, most notably in Syria, where Iran has supported President Bashar al-Assad's regime in its fight against both rebel forces and U.S.-backed opposition groups. The U.S. in turn has backed Kurdish forces and other groups in Syria to limit Iran's presence. The result has been a prolonged and brutal conflict with no clear resolution, further entrenching the regional power struggle. Conclusion: a battle for influence, the battle for regional dominance in the Middle East, is not just about the control of oil or military power. It is a geopolitical struggle that is deeply intertwined with ideologies, religion, and national security concerns. Iran's desire to expand its influence across the region is seen as a direct threat to both American interests and Israeli security. The U.S. and Israel, in turn, have worked to limit Iran's power through economic sanctions, military alliances, and proxy confrontations, all while navigating a complex web of regional rivalries. At the heart of this struggle is a desire for control over the Middle East's future, a future that will likely continue to be shaped by these geopolitical forces, as long as Iran seeks to expand its influence, and as long as the U.S. and Israel remain determined to counterbalance it. The Middle East will remain a region of intense geopolitical competition, where the stakes are high and the consequences are far reaching. Past conflicts, the legacy of the Iranian Revolution, and the severing of diplomatic ties, the relationship between Iran, the United States, and Israel has been fraught with tension for decades, but one event stands out as a major turning point in this complex relationship: the Iranian Revolution of 1979. This revolution, which saw the overthrow of Iran's U.S.-backed monarchy and the establishment of the Islamic Republic under Ayatollah Khomeini, marked the beginning of a new era of animosity between Iran and the West, particularly the United States and Israel. The events of 1979 and their aftermath continue to shape the dynamics of international relations in the Middle East today. The overthrow of the Shah and the end of U.S. influence. Before the revolution, Iran was a close ally of the United States. The Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, had been a strong partner of the U.S. since the 1950s, securing American interests in the region, particularly with regard to oil. Iran was one of the largest oil producers, and its strategic position near the Soviet Union made it a critical ally during the Cold War. The U.S. provided the Shah with military and economic aid in exchange for favorable policies and access to Iranian oil. However, the Shah's regime was deeply unpopular among many Iranians, primarily due to its authoritarian rule, its association with Westernization, and its perceived disregard for Iran's traditional Islamic values. The discontent culminated in the Iranian Revolution of 1979, which was led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. The revolution was a broad-based movement that involved various groups, but it was ultimately Khomeini's Shia Islamic ideology that triumphed. The Shah fled the country, and Khomeini returned from exile to establish the Islamic Republic of Iran. The revolution was not just political, it was deeply ideological, as it marked the birth of a theocratic state that rejected the secularism and Western-style governance that had been imposed under the Shah. For the United States, the fall of the Shah was a major setback. Iran, which had once been a reliable ally, had suddenly become an adversary. The U.S. lost a key partner in the region, and its influence in the Middle East was severely diminished. This loss of influence, coupled with Khomeini's fervent anti-American rhetoric, created a sense of betrayal and deep distrust between the U.S.